And when we sit with this reality long enough, the ache grows heavier, because the difference between war and battle is not just academic, not just historical, not just political, but deeply human, deeply psychological, deeply spiritual, because battles may scar bodies, but wars scar identities. And if you think about this carefully, you will see that in every war, people are forced to redefine themselves, to become versions of themselves they never imagined. Because war demands not just the courage to fight, but the courage to keep living when everything around you is crumbling. And that is why wars leave behind generations of displaced souls. Refugees, widows, orphans, veterans who cannot find their place, children who inherit silence instead of stories. Because battles do not stretch far enough to cause that kind of multi-generational ripple. But wars do. And it is that ripple that makes wars so profoundly tragic. Because their consequences extend far beyond the battlefield, reaching into the cradles of the unborn, shaping lives that never fired a shot. And if you reflect on this long enough, you realize that war is not merely the sum of battles, but the shadow that outlives them, the poison that lingers in soil and memory, while battles are only the sharp bursts of violence that give war its moments of fire. And this is why the language of memory clings more to wars than to battles. Because when people tell stories of survival, they do not say, "I survived this battle." They say, "I survived the war," because the war is what swallowed their years, their seasons, their hopes, while the battles were only chapters inside that devouring book. And here lies another truth: battles are defined by strategy, by tactics, by maneuvers of armies, but wars are defined by endurance, by resilience, by the ability to sustain suffering until one side collapses. And that difference makes all the difference, because battles are won or lost in hours, but wars are won or lost in the slow grind of time. And time is merciless. It wears down even the strongest. And that is why the side that wins the war is not always the side that wins the most battles. Because wars are not just about the clash of armies. They are about the collapse of will, the breaking of economies, the exhaustion of populations. And this is why battles may inspire, but wars exhaust. And this exhaustion is what makes wars so much more devastating. Because exhaustion does not vanish when the final treaty is signed. Exhaustion becomes culture, becomes mistrust, becomes a deep scar that bleeds into politics and families for decades. And that is why so many wars never really end. Because the fighting may stop, but the war lives on in the silence, in the broken trust, in the fractured memories. And that is what people forget when they confuse battle with war. They forget that war is not about a single victory or defeat. It is about the reshaping of entire lives. And if you have ever seen photographs of children staring blankly out of ruined homes, you understand that those children did not survive a battle. They survived a war, and the war will live in them even if they never touch a weapon. Because war seeps into the very marrow of society. It changes how people speak, how they love, how they trust, and this cannot be said of a battle alone. And so the difference grows sharper, clearer, more undeniable. Because battles are sparks, but war is the inferno. Battles are shouts, but war is the silence that follows. Battles are clashes, but war is transformation. And transformation is heavier than any clash could ever be. And if you look at history, you see this over and over. Because the battles of the American Civil War were brutal. Yes, but the war itself is what redefined the United States, reshaped its constitution, altered its economy, shifted its identity, and those shifts lasted long after the last cannon fired. And in the same way, the Second World War left behind not only the ruins of Europe and Asia, but the entire global order of the Cold War. Nuclear proliferation, the United Nations, the realignment of powers, none of which can be explained by single battles, but all of which were born out of war itself. And that is why those who live through wars often say that war never ends. Because the moment the guns fall silent, the consequences remain, the shifts remain, the scars remain. And this is what makes war so different from battle. Because battle is finite, but war is infinite. Battle is event, but war is condition. Battle is the moment you bleed, but war is the lifetime you limp. And that is why every time humanity slides toward war, we must remember that it is not merely about battles to come. It is about the reshaping of existence, the rewriting of futures. And that truth is why I speak with urgency. Because if we forget it, we fall into the trap of thinking that war is just a series of exciting encounters, that it is just soldiers fighting soldiers, when in fact war is hunger, war is exile, war is betrayal, war is despair, war is silence, war is the slow grinding down of spirit. And to confuse it with battle is to make it easier to start, easier to justify, easier to glamorize. And that is dangerous, because while a battle may be tragic, a war is catastrophic. While a battle may ruin a day, a war ruins generations. And this is the truth that shakes me most deeply, that people so often remember battles as markers of glory, while forgetting that war itself is nothing but tragedy multiplied. And if you sit with this, if you really let it sink into your bones, you realize that the line between war and battle is also the line between what we think we can control and what we never can. Because a battle can be planned, fought, won, or lost, but war has a way of slipping beyond anyone's control, becoming a force of its own, a momentum that drags everyone into its current. And once unleashed, war does not care about your plans, your victories, your courage. It devours indiscriminately. And that is why the distinction is not only about words, but about wisdom. Because only when we see that war is larger, deeper, heavier than battle can we resist the temptation to think of it as something manageable, something neat, something glorious, when in truth it is a monstrous flood, and no one who steps into it emerges unchanged. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch the next part, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep creating more content for you. And by subscribing, you'll be the first to know when the next part is uploaded.